Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Holt, the president of the Idaho Falls Rotary Club, and on behalf of our club, we'd like to thank you for joining us for today's Idaho Falls Luncheon Forum. Special thanks go to IE Productions for continuing to provide this valuable forum for our community organizations to continue to provide programs when we can't meet together in person. Over the last several months, we as a community and as a globe have been experiencing the challenges of a global pandemic. Rotary International has dedicated decades to fighting another virus from the globe, the eradication of wild polio. I'd like to share some exciting news that we received from Rotary International yesterday. It's our pleasure to announce to you that the African region has just been certified wild polio virus-free. Rotary members have played an invaluable role in the effort to rid African region from wild polio. We should be proud of all the hard work that we have done to eliminate the wild polio virus throughout Africa and in nearly every country in the world. This milestone is an incredible public health achievement for Rotary members, the African region, and our partners, and a huge step forward on the road to global polio eradication. But we still have important work to do in order to eradicate wild polio in the last two epidemic regions. We have faced many challenges in our journey to eradicate polio, but we've made remarkable progress, and the polio infrastructure that Rotarians helped build will serve as a lasting legacy that will continue to help protect vulnerable children against other diseases for decades to come. Congratulations, fellow Rotarians, as our continued partnership with clubs around the world on this important effort. At this time, I'd like to turn the time over to Eugene Ingman, our August Programs Chair, to introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, Michelle. It's our privilege and honor to have speak to us Dr. Mark Strauss. Dr. Mark Strauss is passionate about creating extractive meteorology innovations to advance sustainability, clean energy technology, and materials independence. He is currently developing innovative recycling strategies to separate and purify lithium batteries into sealable lithium, cobalt, and nickel. His research experience involves the primary and secondary production of critical materials using hydrometallurgical techniques. His undergraduate research involved byproduct recovery of rare earth from copper leach solutions at Arizona University. His master's research entailed recycling fluorescent lights at Colorado University School of Mines. In addition, his PhD graduate research continued to study the separation and purification of rare earth metals from waste fluorescent lights. Dr. Strauss graduated in 2018 with a PhD from the Department of Materials Science and Engineering from Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Rotarians, please welcome me in inviting Dr. Mark Strauss.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Eugene, for your wonderful introduction of my experience. The title of my talk is Sustainable Practices of the Future. And I'm going to give an addendum to that, meaning what I say here today is in no way representative of my employer or no way an official statement from my employer, Idaho National Laboratory. Let's move to the first slide here. And I'm going to bring up a question here. Why do we care about sustainability? Why does this even matter to us? This is an important question because, and I developed my three-part definition for that in terms of economic development, meaning if we don't grow in a manner that maintains a future or leads to a future with a higher standard of living, then we're not being sustainable. And resource security, meaning specifically if we plunder our resources by not recycling computers, hard drives. Those items are not going to be available because it's very hard to grab them from landfills and actually separate, purify them in an economic manner. And that's going to lead to more insecurity in our society. Preservation, specifically preservation of nature. There's an intrinsic value to that. And as a cyclist, a hiker, I want to maintain our natural environment such that we have that in the future. We must have that to be sustainable. Moving to the next slide here. This is our hierarchy of waste management. So you've probably seen the heard of the 3 or 4 R's. I'm doing 4 R's today. And the first one, reduce, meaning, do you really need that cell phone? I mean, I know it's the newest iPhone, but do you really need that? That's a question you have to ask yourself whenever you're ready to buy something. And then reuse. Instead of buying a new cell phone, maybe you could use your friend's cell phone, your child's cell phone, instead of having to buy a new one every time a new one comes out. Or remanufacture, meaning maybe you can get a refurbished computer to purchase rather than have to buy a new one, the new Alienware for your gaming. Do you really need that? That's the question to ask yourself. And actually the last item is recycle. Because actually recycling, we finally get there, it actually takes more energy to recycle than actually taking what we already have and reusing it in a sustainable manner. Moving to the next slide here. Electronic waste. Who's here has heard of electronic waste? I have my own definition of electronic waste, and it's sort of defined here by any device which reaches electronic device that reaches its end of life. And actually, I shorten it as e-waste. And the European Union, with their e-waste initiative, their WE initiative, defines it as waste, electrical and electronic equipment. And it's associated with return to producer laws, meaning laws just say, look, I buy a computer. Who is in charge of this waste at the end of life? European Union in 2002 actually developed laws for that. And we're going to go from there here, showing some states, and not Idaho, actually require hardware at the end of life to go back, say, to Dell or Apple. We don't currently have that in the United States. You can see here by the picture cell phones, refrigerators, and the far left corner you can see a mix of e-waste all together at once. What is the value of e-waste? Well, this is a cell phone. You can see all the metals in that. And showing the quantity of non-ferrous metals is showing here on the right, the gold, silver, platinum, palladium. What you don't see delineated, actually, is the plastic. And as far as I know, even Apple does not, in a sustainable manner, remove the plastic and reuse it. They actually burn it for heat energy at this point. What is the cost of actually collecting? Because this is actually a chart. This is kind of old, 2004. It was actually showing what is the cost of a cell phone and a PC collection, transportation, sorting, disposable hazardous materials. And the important things you can see here are that in regard to cell phones, the biggest cost is actually collection. That's a big issue. They're very light. Now with PCs, the biggest cost is still collection, but hazardous waste is also an issue, how to dispose of that. Here's an example of opportunity with e-waste. Now, with opportunity comes sometimes cost. This graphic here on the left in the New York Times Magazine showing sort of a monster, this e-waste monster. And although there's things of value, the monster is sort of kind of gross and emitting toxic fumes and waste. You can see the gentleman on the right here. He's in India. He actually has some e-scrap here. And what it looks like he's doing is actually separating the copper by hand from the electrical equipment in a way which he doesn't even have shoes on, in an unsafe manner. So here are the issues with e-scrap. More than, as of 2005, almost about 20 to 50 million tons of this material was been produced worldwide. Now, as of 2016, only 20% was actually collected and recycled in a proper manner. And what I mean by proper manner is specifically you're actually sending it to a recycling company that actually separates the metals and actually produces a product, whether it's a purified metal or a concentrate, and disposes of things in a legal manner. In 2020, the level of e-waste has increased by a factor of 2 to 5 times in India, China, and South America. Now, the big issue with e-scrap, e-waste, is that you have things like cadmium, mercury, and lead, and these issues, these heavy metals, build up in the ecosystem and are toxic to animals and humans. And the other issue is, where did this waste come from? And I'll show you in the next slide here in a second. But most of the processing, almost 80% of it, is actually done by the informal sector, meaning it's a non-proper manner. It's people who do it by hand, separate it by hand, sort it, and take out the valuable elements. Now, they may sell the copper pieces, say, to a smelter or someone else. But there's no rules regarding toxins and waste, and that's an issue. Now, looking here at this next slide here, this is the flow of electronic waste here. And you can see here by the picture of the United States, what happens to the waste in the United States. That big blue arrow is going to China. Now, in Western Europe, it's slightly different. Most of that goes to India and Africa. And what happens to that? We don't fully have an accounting of that, actually. What we do know is there's not a full accounting of the material flows, where it goes, where the toxins, how the public health is affected by these toxins. These are our major issues. Now, I want to talk about success. What could be successes in U.S. recycling? I'm going to talk about U.S. recycling specifically here today. What are some successes? Well, if waste can be sorted and segregated based on, say, item, recycling is much more possible because of the issues before, showing the previous slide here. You see the cost of collection? That's the major issue here, is collection. So if we don't collect it, it's not going to happen. We're not going to recycle it. So we have to collect it. So we have to collect and sort it. Really, that's the big issue with that. Now, there's already some collection and sorting of certain e-wastes based on, say, specific value for that. And some are actually being stockpiled in the United States in terms of lamps and hard drives, magnets, and printed circuit boards. Because there's some system, whether United States or worldwide, you actually can send them to them and actually get a very sayable value based on current technology. Lithium-ion batteries also are on that list in some instances. I want to discuss case studies of recycling in America. I'm going to start with computer hard drives, and specifically a company called Urban Mining in San Marcos, Texas. And they actually have built a facility, a commercial facility, and they're currently scaling up that technology for separate, basically, and they create a magnet-to-magnet technology, meaning they start with a magnet, and without any separation, without any acids, they actually have a new magnet. Now, this is actually very desirable because there's no acids involved. There's no toxic separation techniques involved. They just have to add a little bit of elements back into it that are lost in the processing of that. Now, the issue is for them is certification, meaning the magnet in your, say they create a new magnet from magnet-magnet technology. Does a tier 1 manufacturer, say does an LG, do they want that in their speakers of their cell phone? What if there's an issue with that? So they want to be certified that it actually works, and that's a challenge actually for some of these recycling companies. Not only to verify the quality, but actually get it certified through the companies. Now, also waste fluorescent lamps. So there's a company in Nebraska, Rare Salts, and actually they have technology for separating and purifying waste fluorescent lamps. Now, they're currently at the pilot pre-commercial scale. They aren't quite at the commercial scale, but they're getting there. And one of their challenges here, they haven't optimized some of the high temperature separation techniques for that. But I think they'll get there because there is a large stockpile of material that's waiting for them. And this is other information, which is not in the slide, is that the facility in Europe called New Rochelle, that is no longer actually taking new waste fluorescent lamps. So actually, material is going more towards America for that purification and separation. The other case study, and this is sort of the big one that I work with here today, is waste lithium-ion batteries and nickel metal hydride batteries. And there's a company in the United States called Retrieve Technologies. And so what they're doing is they've had an industrial sorting facility for many years. So the challenge with that, and this is the challenge, is that they produce a concentrate. And so what is that concentrate? It's a mix of metals together. They send that to Canada, the Glencore smelter in Canada. But the problem is, through smelting, which is less sustainable to say hydrometallurgy, through smelting, they actually have more emissions, and they're losing most of the lithium and manganese in that process. They're losing metal value in that. Here are some technical challenges to e-scrap, non-technical challenges to e-scrap processing, because these are important also, is that there's no federal law mandating any taking of e-scrap back from your home. Let's say that you throw a computer away. There's no rule saying, oh, you're not allowed to do that. And there's no take-back program for that. Now, there's voluntary programs locally, say in Idaho Falls. There's places you can go say, hey, will you accept my computer? You pay them some money, and they will take it back. Things are slightly different in other municipalities. Say California has stronger laws supporting recycling. Now, the exemption is waste fluorescent lamps, CRTs, and monitors, meaning by law that's considered federal waste because it has mercury in it of a meaningful amount, and so it has to actually be collected. Now, what happens after it's collected is basically they remove the mercury, and they actually send that back to the landfill anyway. So that's not a huge evolution, actually, from that. Now, there's no international monitoring of this waste. We send this waste to China. What happens to those toxins? What happens to that cadmium and mercury? This is something we need to know. How much are we actually recovering that we actually send to China or Europe sending to India? Knowing how much we lose would actually could inspire us to do better. Because if we don't know what we have or how much we're losing, sometimes we don't know what is possible. And I mentioned before, there's no required return to producer laws in most states. And collection, again, is very poor if it's not required. There's just a very poor collection of most things. The question is a question I always ask people, what do you do with your fluorescent lamp at the end of life? And most people look at me in a blank stare. Some people actually go back to a sorting facility or go back to their hardware store, but most people are like, I just throw it away. So that's something to consider. Now, one of the issue is it's very expensive to physically separate these. And this is why most of this waste actually goes to, say, Africa or India so that it actually physically is separated from. And that's really a concern. And if they do it by hand, it isn't as expensive. Now, there's toxic metals and organics that leach into the water because they're doing it in an informal way, which doesn't follow any environmental laws. And this is also a big issue. This is a big sort of high-level issue, is that for most items, they're not designed for disassembly. Now, your cell phone with a robot, say your iPhone, that actually is designed for disassembly. Is every element in that actually recycled? Not exactly, and that's not actually happening. But they're getting there. But for most items and most, there's no actual effort in actually making an item that, look, okay, your monitor, how easily can we disassemble that, take away, say, the mercury, and reuse the other components? If they develop laws in conjunction with manufacturers, it'd be easier to recycle items in the future. So here's some upcoming e-waste processing companies. And this Sung Il MCC Americas, it's actually a Korean company. They actually have permits for a recycling facility in Endicott, New York. So the question is that, the permits are approved, and there's not a lot of details out there, but the question is, is this a low temperature processing facility? Is it a high temperature? Are they actually making saleable components? Are they actually producing a concentrate? We don't actually know the answer to that question. My guess is it's probably high temperature, but we'll see about that. Now, Tesla, you guys have heard of Tesla. Obviously, they're focused on trying to recycle some of their car batteries. And I know because friends of mine are being hired or trying to be hired for their facility. And the question is, why can't they use outside help? They want to do things all in-house. And sometimes that can limit the ability to do a larger scale recycling in society when they don't have that outside input. Now, Redwood Materials, which is based in Sparks, Nevada, they actually have hired 35 people I'm aware of, last count. But the challenge for them is they don't have any IP. They don't have any, say, more sustainable way to recycle lithium-ion batteries. And without going into details of sustainability, this is not the talk, every element of this talk today. We'll go toward, the question is, what can you do? What can you do as a consumer to improve the sustainability of your life? That's an important question. You can support return to producer laws, such that there's a requirement to actually manufacturers take these back, say Dell or Apple. You can physically bring back your electronics to municipal recycling facilities. Can I tell you what happens after that happens? I can't tell you that. But at least there's a first step in that. If you throw away your old CRT, I'm certain there's no way it's ever going to be recycled in the future. But if you send it to a storing facility, there's a chance that something could be recycled from that. Just to be aware of your personal choices and the waste generation. Make that internal check-in. Ask that question to yourself. Do I really need that new fancy car? Or if you do, maybe you should do like a electric car. Porsche has electric cars now. And this is a plug for my employer. Get involved in e-scrap recycling research. I know they're hiring positions for e-scrap recycling, so talk to me, send a message to Idaho National Laboratory, and that's the end of my presentation here today. And I want to thank you all. Specifically, I want to thank you for listening, the listener, but to the Rotary Club for this invitation. It's been a great opportunity to share my opinions, to inform the viewers, and to possibly get some input because we're accepting questions about my presentation. So I see there's a list of questions already set up for me. It's awesome. So the first question is, what is your top recommendation that viewers can do to help reduce their impact on e-waste? So as we mentioned in the hierarchy, reducing, meaning you can delay your purchase a little bit. Maybe you just need a new screen. Maybe you just need like a new screen protector. If you're, that could lengthen the time you use items. And there's also sometimes opportunity to say upgrade components of say laptops or computers such that I don't need a new everything once in a while. I can actually go component to component. You can bring your waste to municipal recycling facilities. Because like I said, if there's a chance, if you bring it to your municipal recycling facility for e-scrap, there's a chance it'll be recycled. Because if you throw it in the garbage, the dump, there is no chance it'll be recycled. Next question here. Can the recycling e-waste minimize the use of rare earths? This is my specialty here. Yeah, actually the answer is yes. So the companies I mentioned, like Urban Mining, if we can recycle hard drives, we don't need to mine these elements, say, in China. Now, we do have a small production in the United States, but we don't meet that production from merely primary production in the United States. So actually, if we can recycle a hard drive, and there's probably a section to do that at your local municipal e-waste company, or say Idaho National Laboratory is actually a place to bring your hard drive so they can end up at a place like Urban Mining who can recycle it. Other rare earths. So typically hardware stores will accept waste fluorescent lamps, and that's a way to minimize the. Oh, I didn't answer the question. So the question is, what can recycling minimize the use of rare earths? So we're talking about actually recycling, not use. They're slightly different. So obviously, if an item uses rare earths currently, and depending on the item, actually, there's a lot of research done in the group I work with to actually minimize use of rare earths. That's one way to do it. Recycling isn't a way to minimize the use. Actually, building new technology, say through Idaho National Laboratory, could minimize the use of rare earths. Okay, so the next question is, where are the best local recycling facilities? This is an interesting question because for those who live in Idaho Falls, it's relatively challenging to recycle items, meaning you typically have to pay a certain amount of money for that recycling. I live in an apartment where they don't recycle anything. You have to actually bring it to the local place. So I don't actually know. I bring mine to a municipal local place, but I don't know if it's the only one or the best one in town for that. How have the laws changed the e-waste issues there? It's a good question. So I lived in Belgium for 3 months, and so I have some idea of how things work in 2016. I was there. When you're done with something, let's say it's a cup, let's say it's a cell phone, there is a place to put that. And what there isn't a place to put is for pure garbage. In the United States, you have like your big bin, you just throw things away. There's actually a place for most things. And e-scrap, where I lived in the apartments, there was actually a place in the basement where you put that, and they had like a separate pickup for that. They've definitely changed things. I mean, they have facilities, or they had, say, the Umicore facility, say, for lithium-ion batteries, is well established for lithium battery recycling. Now, Solvay Rhodia, they had a waste fluorescent lamp recycling facility, which is actually currently down, and I don't know exactly why, it's COVID, et cetera, but they certainly had facilities because of the rules regarding requirements in recycling. They actually had to recycle, meaning they had to be picked up, and that material had to be brought to the recycling facility. So that actually made a big difference for that. Now, what is the best way to recycle old cell phones? That's a really good question, because I'm challenged by that. There is a local municipal company that will accept them. Idaho National Laboratories, where I work, will accept them. Often universities have a place for cell phones. Sometimes there's even cell phone stores have a place for dropping them off. But if they're usable, and I use an example, you have this gentleman here named Eugene who just introduced me. I actually sold him my old cell phone. If you can I didn't even know if it worked or well, but I kind of made it work. I was like, Eugene, I have this amazing cell phone. Will you buy it? He's like, totally. So that's actually the best way is actually to make use of things you're about to throw away. Well, you have to upgrade the software, change the screen. That is actually really a big strategy in terms of saving energy. Recycling is on the higher tier in terms of energy generation to reuse an item, but actually making things work is a great way for that. So I've answered some questions. Are there any more questions for me last moment regarding this? Well, I want to thank you, the Rotary Club today, and the listeners for listening to my presentation today. I wish you guys a wonderful Wednesday.
Thank you so much, Dr. Strauss, for your presentation. I commented while we were listening that I had never really thought about e-waste, and so this was very informative, and thank you so much for coming to speak to our club today. Thank you, Eugene, for coordinating our August programs, and thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll look forward to having you come back and join us for future programs. Thank you.